And I have been changed for good. Hey everyone, Scout Pirate Pop Cult fan here. I just saw the new Wicked movie, Wicked for Good. Happy Thanksgiving, by the way. I hope everyone is having a great Thanksgiving today. Yes, let's go ahead and get into this review for Wicked for Good. I loved this movie. The more I think about this movie, the more I appreciate it for what it is, and I am ready to give my full review for this. So let's go ahead and talk about this movie. So Wicked for Good, it is a follow-up to the previous movie that came out last year, Wicked. It is an adaptation of the musical, and the musical in turn was an adaptation of a novel that was a prequel novel to the original novel, while also being follow-up to the original Wizard of Oz as well. And I think this franchise has potential to keep going, and I've heard the people that worked on this film talk about wanting to make more movies after this. So even though this was the last hurrah for Glinda and Elphaba, I do think that this franchise can keep going. I think they can make more movies to expand this world, and I would definitely be really excited for that. And I need to talk about the cast, because I think everyone in the cast is phenomenal in their roles. Elphaba, played by Cynthia Erivo, she's amazing in this role. She really is. And Ariana Grande, I thought she was really great in the first film too, but here she really shines, pun intended. And the theming here, the theming of how it can be really hard to have an adult friendship, and even when you try to make that last, there's sacrifices that you kind of have to make sometimes as an adult if you want that, and it can be really hard. And I love the theming of that in this movie, as well as also some of the theming in regards to how you have this kind of corrupt government that is mistreating animals, which I don't know if it was never fully addressed. It was never fully addressed why animals in the world of Oz lost their ability to speak in the first film. That was one question I had from the first film that never really got answered in this one. And that was my one tiny little, critique I have for this film, because I feel like they should have answered that question that I had, but they didn't really tackle that answer. But also, a few other elements that I do want to mention here that I don't think were quite as well fleshed out as would have wanted them to be fleshed out, in regards to some of the characters that connect more to the original Wizard of Oz story. But I'm mainly just saying that because once they do start kind of taking place at the same time as the original Wizard of Oz story, I just feel like a couple of those characters get a bit of a shaft. I would have liked to see more of the Cowardly Lion. I would have liked to see more of the Scarecrow. And granted, I loved what they did with the Scarecrow and how the movie ended. That's all I'm going to say about that. But it had a happy ending. That's all I'm going to say about that. And I think in regards to being a companion piece, both this film and the first Wicked film, to the original 1939 film, I do think is a more worth it experience compared to the Oz the Grand Powerful movie that came out back in 2013 with James Franco. As much as I like that film, these two movies are superior to the James Franco film in a lot of ways, and especially in regards to the writing. I think the writing is really good, especially when you get to some of the plot twists here in this film. And there's something to be said about the Wizard of Oz character, played by Jeff Goldblum. I think he's not necessarily. I think the real threat of these Wicked films is, can't remember her name at the moment. The madam, the professor from Shiz Academy in the previous film. I would say that she's the real threat. She's the real threat, not the wizard, not Elphaba. I would say she's a real threat. She's the real kind of antagonist of this story. And I think there's something to be said about how certain characters are handled in this new follow-up that ties loose ends from the first film. And this is a movie that really spoke to me. Like, I teared up a couple times, especially near the end. The songs, by the way, the choreography, the songs, the For Good song. I loved that song. It's just as good as Defying Gravity. The soundtrack for both of these movies is phenomenal, and I love the singing. Everyone has amazing voices when they're singing, and it's just very like moving in a sense that you get a lot of the emotion out of the song performances from the cast, and that's what I love about these two films. You get a lot of the emotion, the reaction from the singing and the performing of the cast and the actors. It's really phenomenal. It really is. And also the production design. Like, that is my biggest praise for these Wicked movies. It's the production design. And I was really happy that they did practical effects for Tin Man and Scarecrow. I was really happy for that when we got to that aspect of the film. They did prosthetic effects compared to CGI, and it feels real as a result of that. I love when they don't rely on CGI for every single character in a film, and the makeup, what they did with Scarecrow, admittedly, made me think of Ryan Reynolds. And then Tin Man. Tin Man, his backstory. Wow. There are definitely quite a few moments in this film that made me go, "Oh my God! Oh, ow! Oh man, I feel so sorry for that character." And then, there are a lot of characters in this movie I feel sorry for. I feel bad for them, especially the goat professor. I felt bad for him as well. There's so many characters in this movie. Like, these movies are ensemble casts of actors. Coleman Domingo voiced the Cowardly Lion, and I recognized his voice. He's been in a few things I've seen, and it was just a movie that really spoke to me. And also the theming of how you're seeing this world in which the wizard himself, he's not necessarily the worst person in this world, but he's also not that great of a person either. He's a fraud. He's lying to everyone, and the thing that he is kind of hiding is kind of disturbing, to say the least, because of what's going on with the animals. That's all I'm going to say about that. But wow. And I just think that, the writing here, the theming, and also the music, the cast, just everything about it, I just thought was so well done. I do think that there are times when the movie does. No, I think it goes at a pretty good pace. I think this movie actually has a pretty good pace to it. I think I would argue that it does go to bit of a. There are moments where it does slow down, and that's the one other thing I will say about it. But overall, though, it was a phenomenal film. I loved it. I loved the friendship between Glinda and Elphaba. There are moments between them where I really felt for both of them, and how some things that happen, through surrounding them, they kind of have to share the blame at times, and where the story is concerned and what happens to certain characters. And that's what makes this story tragic in a sense, but at the same time happy once you get to the ending. And there's just a lot. I think everyone can appreciate these movies. Everyone, even people like myself that aren't really huge fans on musicals. There's something here for everyone with these Wicked films. And another thing that I have to address here, as someone who's a massive Planet of the Apes fan, I loved the flying monkey Chester. I liked his arc in this film. you know, and also I was listening very carefully to the Flying Monkeys. I am pretty sure they used a lot of the same chimpanzee sound effects from the Planet of the Apes reboot films for the Flying Monkeys. Like, I kid you not, there are, the cries that the flying monkeys make, it, and they look more like apes. They're bigger, and as someone who's a massive Planet of the Apes fan, I was kind of happy that the monkey Chester finally spoke near the end of the film. That's one other thing I will say, but it's mainly just coming from the Planet of the Apes fan in me, which made me appreciate this film even more, because these wicked movies and the Planet of the Apes reboot films, even though they're completely different kind of films, they do tackle similar issues and political issues within the theming of the story and the writing. I did notice that, and also, like, listening when I was listening to the Flying Monkeys, whenever they were like going all crazy and stuff, it sounded literally like they took the sound effects of the chimpanzees from the Planet of the Apes reboot films and just reusing them for the Flying Monkeys. It really sounded like it. It really did. So I think that this movie is something special, even though I don't think it's. I like this movie actually more than the first one, if I'm gonna be honest. Like, because I just think that this is more focused on story, whereas the first film was kind of the entryway into the world of Oz, while at the same time having all that flashy choreographic songs, and it was very big and beautiful in the world of Oz. And then this film kind of narrows more down on the story and what's going on within the confines of the world of Oz and Emerald City, and and everything that they're tackling with these political issues and stuff like that. I just think I appreciated more, and also the emotional stakes for the characters as well made me really like this movie more than the first film, and I loved it. So if I had to give this a grade, I would definitely give it an A grade. Definitely worth it. Very vastly worth it. And I'm going to recommend to Planet of the Apes film. I'm going to recommend to Planet of the Apes fans these movies, because I think that Planet of the Apes fans will actually really like these movies. And these movies might not be for everyone because they're musicals, but there's something to appreciate about these films, especially for Planet of the Apes fans. So that should do it for this review. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts about the Wicked for Good film once you do see it. I hope you all have a happy Thanksgiving, and I will catch you guys next time. Take care and have a great day with your families, and take care and peace.